Right, hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're on beef and Guinness stew with a bit of mashed potato. So first off, I just wanted to show you about the slow cooker, because I know that quite a few people that are watching, especially where we live in Peebles near Leithen, have got these slow cookers that have been sent out. Firstly, you've got like a removable sleeve in there. This removable sleeve, the bit that you cook in, is a pot in its own rights. So if I didn't have an induction hob, if I had a gas hob, I'd be just cooking everything. I'd be doing everything that I'm doing in my saucepan. I'd be doing it in this inner aluminium pot. It just doesn't work with induction. So what I'm doing is cooking in my pot and then transferring into here. But if you've got this, it'll save you a bit of washing up at the very least. So first off, I'm gonna get my saucepan on. I want to get a nice bit of heat in my saucepan here. So I've got a pretty commercial induction hob, so I'm not putting it on exactly full whack. But if you've got a gas hob at home, I probably would go with full whack. I know a lot of people watching this shop in supermarkets. I'm not encouraging you to shop in supermarkets. Shopping in a local butcher is definitely a good way to go. It helps the local economy. But for those of you who do, what I've got here is a perfect storm of a pack of diced beef, which is 454 grams, which is a pound. This will be enough for a family of 4, but it's probably a bit tight on the meat. So for this recipe today, I guess it depends on how impoverished or how wealthy you're feeling. If times are hard, you're a bit skint, I would go with the 1 pack. If times allow, you might want to go with, I'd say, the equivalent of a pack and a half. So roughly about 150 grams of raw meat per person. So I'm going with 2 packs. Okay. So I'm going to add some flour. I'm going to make a seasoned flour here. So what I'm doing is I've just got a tray, adding a little bit of plain flour. I'll be honest, I've done this at home with self-raising flour. I've done it with strong white flour. You know, I'm not precious around what type of flour I'm using. A little bit of salt. Here we are. If I had some pepper in the kitchen, I'd use that as well. I'm going to put a little bit of thyme in there as well. So I've got a seasoned flour. Now this flour, I'm going to put the beef into the flour, and it's this seasoned flour here which is going to thicken our stew today. So I'm just going to get it all in there, get the beef all mixed in with that flour and salt. You can really mix it up a bit if you wanted to do something, I don't know, you could put like sort of southern spices in here, and you could treat this with, you could do it with chicken instead of beef. You could put some bit of coriander seed, a bit of cumin seed, and you could do something sort of Moroccan-y with lamb. Anyway, that's what I've got here. I've got a sort of sticky beef, sticky from the flour. And I'm going to seal that in my saucepan. So my saucepan's been heating already. You'll notice I've not put anything in the saucepan. I've not got any oil or anything in there yet. That's largely so that whatever I do put in there doesn't start smoking ahead of when I need it to. So hot pan, you can see a bit of a smoke coming up there. I've got some oil here. I'm using vegetable oil. You could use, in a pinch, you could use anything really. You could use some olive oil if necessary. But what is important is, because this beef is cold, we want, and it's going to reduce the temperature here, we want this pan super hot before we put it in, because we really want to colour the beef. And this is going to help give us colour for our stew. Okay, so beef in, and that sizzle is what I want. I don't know if the camera can see this, but if it can, you'll see that I'm not filling this saucepan. It's not full to the brim with the beef. That's because I do want the colour. If I filled that with the cold beef, I wouldn't get the colour on the beef that I would want. The temperature of the beef brings down the temperature of the saucepan. So instead of getting a lovely caramelised brown colour, I'd be getting a sort of greyish colour, which we definitely don't want. Okay. So while this is browning, I'm going to make a start on chopping some of my vegetables. So for this I'm using onions and celery and carrots. There we are. And I'm just doing a rough chop on everything here. I'm just doing this while the beef is colouring, just to sort of save a bit of time more than anything. There we are. Now I'm going to chop a bit of onion. So I'm just chopping it, it's just a very rough chop here. Chopping it into 4 along the length, and then another, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just in 3 along the middle. Here we are. And the heat down on my pan. That's the beef out there, so I've got a nice colour on my beef there. I'm going to use this pan again. I'm going to use this for just frying off my vegetables before I put them into the slow cooker. So all I'm doing here, I'm just chopping another onion. So we're going to have 2 onions in here. So I'm going to start by frying this onion off. So while that's going, I'm going to peel and chop my carrots and celery. So a little bit of oil back in the pan. Onions back in here. So any of the juices, any of the goodness from my beef, I'll now have in the pan. But I'm not going to have this on quite as high a heat. So I don't want to blacken my onion. A little bit of colour on it would be nice. But just try and sort of get some of the juices from the beef in with that onion. While that's going, I'm going to peel and chop a few carrots. Here we are. Right, I reckon that will do me. So all I'm going to do with my carrots, you can chop them any which way you fancy. For me, I like a little bit of shape on mine. I think sometimes you can't take the chef out, you know. So all I'm doing is sort of turning mine at angles. That just gives me a nice, sort of wedge shape on it. You could put potatoes in this as well if you wanted. If you wanted a simple, truly sort of one pot wonder, you could put your spuds in here. Today I'm going to cook my potatoes separately, so we're going to serve this with a mash. I think anything goes really. So onions, that'll do me. Just got a bit of colour on them. I've just sort of softened them. I've just taken any of those beef juices. I'll put my carrots in now. While the carrots are sealing, I'm just going to wash my celery. Just give each of these stalks a wee rub and a wash. So I'm going to use 3 stalks of celery. It's also a good way of getting these nutrients, getting some vegetables into you. There we go. So I'm just going to top and tail the celery. And I'm just going to chop this celery on the bias. Doesn't really matter. But just some chunks of celery like that. I'm going to put it in with the carrots. Here we are. Turn the heat up. There we are. So what I'm doing here, so all all of my bits at the bottom of my pan, bits of beef and whatever, because of the moisture that's in the carrots and in the celery and in the onion, it's now sort of loosening. So this is all going to give us flavour in our stew. I'm just going to add the onion and the beef. There'll be juices in here as well. Onion and the beef. You can hear that. Give that a stir through. And I'm using a can of Guinness. Other stouts are available, or beers. And if you don't want to spend a quid, if you don't want to spend a quid or two on beer to put into a stew, you absolutely can use water. The beauty of adding Guinness is you get a real, or any stout, is you get a real depth of flavour with it that you won't get with the water, and you also get a glorious sort of colour, because we want this stew to be a nice sort of dark, earthy stew. I'm just bringing this up to the heat. I don't want this boiling away too much. I'm going to add a little bit more thyme. I'm going to add a couple of beef stock cubes. Now I've got salt in my seasoned flour, so I think 2 stock cubes will be plenty here. Here we are, and look, I'm just crumbling the stock cube in as is, just on top. I'll just give that a stir through, and I'm going to transfer that to the slow cooker. And I'm going to add just a little bit of water just to make sure that it's submerged. So, here we are. Transfer that there. You stay shut up. Here we are. I'm just going to use a saucepan, just get some water in there, just so that my stew here is submerged. So I'm going to cook this. I'm going to cook this on low for 8 hours. So just on the low setting for 8 hours. So you can, just a final thing, you can bring forward your cooking time as well using a slow cooker. So this is, like I'm doing this dish as if you were doing it in the morning before you go to work or whatever, doing it in the morning before you take the kids to school or whatever. But you could bring this forward. So doing it on low, it will take about 8 hours in a slow cooker. So do it in the morning, come back in the evening, it's ready. But if you want to bring it forward, you can do it on high in the slow cooker. That will do it in roughly about 4 hours, or medium about 6 hours. Okay, so beef casserole or beef and Guinness stew is away cooking in a slow cooker. So while that's on, we're going to make some mashed potato. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some water in my saucepan. You want enough water in your pot, I reckon, to sort of cover your potatoes. And for today, we're using Maris Piper potatoes. They're my favourite for mash. Other varieties are available. So what I tend to do is start with the water in the pot. And all I'm going to do is just peel the potatoes. I've got the worst peeler in the world. It's driving me nuts. I normally use a speed peeler. If you've got a speed peeler, use a speed peeler. Okay, so I've got, I reckon, somewhere in the region of about 1 kilo of potatoes here. Now, you could probably get away with less. I'm basing this roughly on feeding a family of 4, but I'm also basing this on the family of 4 being me and 3 of my big, heavy, greedy mates. So you could probably feed a few more with it. And I guess how much potatoes you put in depends on how much you like mashed potato. I like mashed potato a lot. So no 2 potatoes are ever going to be the same. Potatoes cook at different rates. If you've got big potatoes in with little potatoes in the same pot, then the small potatoes will cook before the big ones do, and that means that you've either got overcooked, waterlogged sort of potatoes in your mash, or you've got undercooked potatoes in your mash. So best way around that is to be like, I'm not too obsessive, but try and get these roughly about the same sort of size. So all I'm going to do, I look at the smallest one I've got, which is this here, and I'm going to chop. I'm going to use this as the the basis. I'm going to keep this small one whole, and then sort of medium ones I'm going to cut into 2, and then big ones I'm going to cut into 4. Feel free to use a chopping board. Here we are.
One eternity later.
Here we are. And then all I'm going to do is put a slug of salt in that, and I'm going to cook this. I'm going to cook this on a sort of medium-ish heat. Slug of salt. Medium-ish heat. I'm just going to cover, so I don't know if any of you have seen any of the other videos. You'll know that I haven't got all of the equipment most of the time, so anything can be a lid. In this case, a big bowl, that's the lid. I'm going to cook these out, I reckon, for about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, basically until they're soft enough for a knife to pierce them comfortably. Okay, so we're about 15, 20 minutes later here. I've been keeping a bit of an eye on the spuds. I'm looking for, what I don't want is that they fall apart as soon as you sort of put a knife in there. That means that they're waterlogged, not great mash. Equally, I want the knife to pierce the potato easily, so not too much resistance. So this is about how I want it. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to drain these in a colander. And I'm going to put just going to use the same saucepan that the potatoes were in. I'm going to put it back on the heat, and I'm going to add some butter and some milk. So I've got dog ends of butter kicking around in the fridge. So I'm using here, that I reckon I'll use as much butter as I can possibly get away with. I've been eating butter all my life. I've never had any problems. I heartily recommend it. I'm using, I reckon, about half a block of butter to these potatoes. I have been known to use more. If I could use a block, I'd use that. Might even go more. And I'm using about a cup of milk. And I'm just bringing this, just getting this on the heat here. You might have fancy sort of moolies and bits and bobs of equipment like that. I'm gonna do my potatoes in a potato ricer. I think it cost me about £5. Things like this are absolutely brilliant for mashing potato, because it gets rid of any sort of lumps. So potato goes in, press it down, out it comes through the holes, no lumps, you know. But I have also made mash with a fork. I've squeezed it through sieves. Whatever works for you guys. If you've got a potato masher, you can follow this exactly the same way. Just putting your potatoes in the pan with the butter and the milk. But this is what I'm doing today. So all I'm doing is squeezing down on my ricer, getting the potato into the butter and the milk. And I guess it's a bit of a personal thing with mash. Some people like a really sort of firm mash. Some people like a really loose, wet mash. I like mine probably somewhere in the middle. I'm not too worried about the butter being fully melted before I start doing this as well. Like, realistically, I'm putting in hot potatoes into a hot pan that's on the heat. So if that butter hasn't fully melted yet, it won't be long until it does. Next key ingredient here is salt. Really important. So just using the cheap stuff tonight, it'll be fine. So always work on the principle that you can add it, but you can't take it out. So start small and build up. So getting that. I don't know if you can see this, Mr. Cameraman, but that's what I'm looking for here. So I've got a sort of creamy, soft dollopy. Don't have to use butter and milk. I think anybody, if you've got any dairy allergies or anything like that, olive oil works really well. Olive oil mash is really nice. Exactly the same process, just no butter and milk. But your salt is absolutely key. I would also put pepper in here, but I haven't got any. So that's coming for the next video. Perfect. Right folks, here we are, 8 hours later. I'm looking to see that the beef is tender and falling apart. Look, you should be able to break that beef with a spoon easily enough, which I'm doing. And the other equally very important test. Oh, is that it tastes good. And it does. So now time to dish up. So I'm going to dish a couple of these because there's a few of us here. I know that we're all hungry. Here we are. And final thing for me is I wanted to just show you a small cheat that I tend to use in a kitchen, especially if I'm serving large amounts of mash. You don't have to do this at all. This is a bit of chef patter, you know. But if you're looking for, if you're looking to serve some mash up and for it to look quite nice, this is a way of getting a nice sort of canal of mash on your plate. So all I'm doing is cling filming my spoon like so. And the theory is that my mash doesn't stick to the cling film. The mash will come off of the cling film easily. So I can spoon this into a nice sort of canal on the top like so. There we are. Beef and Guinness stew with mash. Enjoy. Right, thanks for watching, folks. If you haven't already, please like, comment and subscribe. It all helps the cause. Cheers.